Hey everybody, Randy with Lowbuck LS here again. Thanks for joining us on the live stream this evening. We got another interview for you guys. We got Eric with 815 LSX swaps, and his buddy Dan is going to be hopping on here soon, hopefully. They run the 815 LSX swaps YouTube channel. They've done a number of LS swaps on their channel. Eric also has bumper trim rings for sale. We're going to talk about that a bit later. And they've got a growing following on social media. They just recently passed 1,000 subs on YouTube. They're up around 1,300 right now. So I'm going to talk about social media and that kind of thing a little bit. So thanks for joining us, Eric. How are you doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. So can you just start off by telling us a little bit about your background? Like, I know you're from down in the States somewhere, but tell us where you're from and how you got into the car hobby and doing LS swaps and that type of thing.
Absolutely. So we are in Northern Illinois. Um, been working on cars since I was like 13. My parents bought me my first car. It was a Foxbody Mustang, actually. Got that when I was like 13. They picked it up for like 150 bucks.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of did odd and end jobs as a kid to make money so that I could get it going. It was in a front end accident, so I had to replace the front bumper and some windows and stuff. So really, ever since then, my dad was into working on cars. Him and his buddies were always doing stuff. So my grandpa used to build motorcycles. So I've just always been around cars and wrenching.
Nice. Oh, and we might have just lost your audio. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you still.
Okay, something just cut out there for a sec, but all right. So I noticed on your social media, I saw you just got your twin turbo LS Mustang fired up and on the street. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, so it's a junkyard 6.0. Just new gaskets is the only thing I did do it. I actually had a spare motor that I was going to build, but I ended up selling that to Dan when he blew his engine in the BMW.
Oh yeah.
But it's twin GT45s, stock 6 liter. And when I picked it up, it was just a shell. There was no suspension, there was no wheels. It was two doors, quarter panels and roof, trunk, and a cage. That was it.
Oh wow.
So it's been about 3 years I've been working on that. Um, it is on a Holly Terminator X,
Oh
and
okay.
then it's a leash street strip board, so that's where all the lights and everything else is wired into.
Oh okay. Cool. Explain a little more about that leash board. It's like is that like a power management module, or I'm not familiar with that system.
It's a relay board, so it controls. All my wiring goes through there. That's not engine related. And so I've got my trans brake, all my headlights, my electric fans, everything is wired up right through that, and it's just mounted inside my passenger door.
Okay. Cool. And Dan is saying you didn't send him a link, so
Yeah, it looks like. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't.
few technical issues today, but no problem.
Yeah, it's it's
That's all.
always something.
Yeah, and that's always how it seems to work. Like 5 minutes before you figure out something's wrong, and
Right. Like I was saying before, we set up a new kind of podcast room so that both of us could be in one room doing it, and uh, it didn't go so well. We're having computer issues, so last minute here.
yeah. Oh well, no, we'll get her figured out.
See if I can get this sent to him real quick.
I'm starting to get a few comments in the chat here. If you guys have any questions as we go along, just drop them in the chat. Hugh Robinson says he's building a Gen 4 6 liter for an 03 Crown Vic. That sounds like a fun project.
Oh, absolutely. All
Work
right.
up the Chevy stuff, he says. Yep.
Hopefully we got that going to him so he can jump on here.
Okay, cool. Um, Yeah. So what are your plans for like, is that Mustang totally done now or?
No, it still needs a bunch of work. So when I got it, like I said, I was originally just trying to get it running. So junkyard motor, regasket it, throw it in, get the car running, driving, and then I was going to go back and actually start working on upgrading stuff. So now that it's actually running and driving, it needs like new valve seals, and I've got a spare set of heads.
Right on.
I've got 1000 cc injectors to go in it. I got a second fuel pump. I don't have a cam, so that's the one thing that I am waiting on. I got to get that. So over the winter, we're gonna pull it back out, get the new cam put in it, get it ordered, get it put in. I'm gonna go with a BTR twin turbo cam,
Oh, right
and
on.
then kind of just upgrade the rest of the components to help support that.
Yeah. And what are your plans for that car? Is it going to be like a drag car, or what are
So
you building it for?
So when I first got it, I wanted to build it just as a drag car. So I wasn't too worried about driving it on the street. It was just going to be strictly a race car. But over the last couple years, it kind of slowly evolved, and I'm like, I don't really just want to have a strictly drag car. So I started looking at what it would take to get it street legal, and just decided it'd be more fun to be able to drive it around and not just take it to the track only.
Yeah.
And I've
That.
never built a drag car before, so my first LS swap was the 240. And um, when I got that, I wanted to get into drifting. Drifting was the thing when I built this.
All right.
Probably, I think it's been 10, 11 years since I built it. And then I ended up going to a no prep race in Oklahoma and was like hooked on drag
Right.
racing. So when I came back, I'm like, well, I'm going to build the 240, just, change some suspension around and see if we can't make that a drag car.
Yeah.
And then ended up coming across this Mustang and decided I'll leave the 240 alone and build this Mustang.
Nice. Yeah, that's kind of what I want to do with my truck too, is not have it just for drag racing, but have it so it'll handle decently and be able to do some autocross and that type of thing too. So
Yeah, and I've done autocross with the 240. I've done drifting with it, but I was very conservative because the 240 is super clean car, and I didn't want to wreck it or anything. But I've taken that to the drag strip as well, so I've done quite a bit with that, and I like that just because I can jump in and drive it anytime I want. It's not a full blown race car or anything.
yeah, yeah, that would be fun. That'd be my fear. Like I've always thought I'd like to try drifting, but going sideways at high speeds, I'm pretty sure I'd pile my stuff into the wall pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's definitely it's a scary thing to kind of feel when you're doing it because you're out of control but yet in control at the same time.
Yeah, and I see Dan's got the link, so let me try add him in here now. There's Dan.
Hi.
Thanks
Hey,
for,
how's it going?
good. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
No problem.
Why
Thanks for
don't
having me.
Yeah, you bet. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and how you got into cars?
So, my name's Dan, other half of 815. So, a little bit about me. I got into cars kind of really young age. My dad always taught me how to kind of be self-sufficient working on cars, and taught me how to do brakes, do tire rotations, pretty much every little minor thing you'd ever need to do to a car just to be to own and operate a car from about the age of 8 years old or so. So it's just something I've kind of always been into and always been big part of my life. And it wasn't up until maybe about 4 years ago when I met Eric that I actually wanted to do my first engine swap. And that actually got me into wanting to learn how to build engines, break them down, clean them, build them up, and then go into the swap. So this is only something I've been really passionate about for the past several years.
Cool. Yeah, I was into cars when I was a kid and then took a long break and had a family myself and got tied up in work. And I've just kind of came back to it recently myself. So I can identify with that. But, so the BMW is yours, right?
It is mine.
So, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that car?
All right. So it is a 99 E36 convertible 325i. to be exact. I got that from one of Eric's friends. It originally started when I wanted to do an engine. I wanted to build an engine. I wanted to get something from the junkyard, tear it down, build it up. So I ended up getting a 5.3 LS, tearing it down, doing a full rebuild to it, going and doing way more than I should have done to it in the first place.
Right.
And I never actually had a car to put it in. And the plan was actually I wanted to look for a BMW X5 SUV. I haven't seen anybody do those, and they were kind of like, I mean, I think I saw one person on YouTube actually have one of those, and to be LS swapped anyways. So that was the plan. That's what the build was for. One of Eric's buddies was getting rid of the E36, and it was like a stupidly cheap price that I could not turn my back on. And I, before that, was not looking at that car at all. It was not even on my radar. It wasn't something I was even ever looking at. And the price was so good. If I would have turned it down, he would have got it. So
right.
And he told me that immediately, that if I wasn't going to buy it, he was going to buy it.
Yeah. So
yeah. So we got it as a completely gutted, stripped chassis, roller only, had some of the interior, but it was missing a vast majority of it. The wiring harness internally, everything was ripped out of it. It was, I believe, being turned into a drift car or just race car, but it had practically nothing. So it was a perfect chassis to start with. Went ahead and found a totaled out good condition interior anyways. Same exact car. Gave the kid $180 to bring it back to my house, stripped everything out of it I needed, including wire harness, HVAC, everything. So it is now a full complete car, and it's gone through 2 iterations of motors in there. We had the 5.3. It was naturally aspirated for the first year. I decided I wanted more fun, so I decided twin turbo. Well, I decided turbo was the way to go.
Right.
Eric got a couple GT45s, and I grabbed one of them to see how it would look in the engine bay, and there's no way. It was not going to fit. It was just not an option. So I ordered a GT35, and I looked at it, I was like, well, that's too small. There's no way. So I ordered another GT35, and I was like, no matter what happens, this car is going to go back together with 2 turbos on it. So I took the whole front end off, started building it out as a twin turbo, and I said, the turbos go on, and anything that doesn't fit leaves. So we chopped the frame around it. We moved the radiator into the core support. A lot of, I think it was like douchebaggery would be the proper terminology to use for that. Went on to do that. And then before I even got the thing like dialed in, only put a few miles on it, I blew the motor up.
Oh, no.
So we were able to replace it with a 6-liter that Eric had. And I think, what was it, 2 weeks? We had the thing back up and running for a car show.
I think it was something like that. It was real quick.
Yep. Real fast turnaround. So now it's a 6-liter twin turbo with made it to a 4L80, which
nice.
Everybody says won't fit in that car, but I'm thinking they might be a little wrong.
You made it happen, so it obviously fits. Eh? So is it all like street legal? And
Yep, absolutely. Insured and all. I mean, what's your definition of street legal? And in some states it's not, so.
Yeah, if you can drive it down for a burger, I'd say it's street legal.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they don't check the cats or anything, I'll just say somebody stole them.
Sure yeah, exactly. And looks like we lost Eric, but so you mentioned the X5 was in your original plan. Is that still a future project you want to do at some point, or?
It's probably always going to be there, but now since I've done this build and I've seen a lot of other people, they started doing the X5 builds, and it's no longer that unicorn that I wanted in the first place. So
right,
it's like
not the first or one of the first ones to do it, eh?
Right. But I mean, there's going to be like very little that I'll ever find again. That's just not like going to be somebody's already done. It's blown up. Yeah. It's the new small block Chevy. Everybody's doing it. Everybody.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like LSs have been swapped into pretty much any vehicle you can think of. Yeah.
So I mean, it's finding another vehicle. It's not going to happen. They've been done to death. So I think I want to go back and find something that I like. And one of my original favorites is the late 80s, early 90s S10 Blazer, the 2-door.
Yeah.
And I think I want to strip one of those down, do a full race car build, because I have my street car. I want my race car. So that'd probably be the next build, is something that's more race oriented.
Yeah. Those S10s, and yeah, they'd be a fun build, and
Oh yeah.
probably quite a bit easier than the BMW.
Oh yeah.
I'm
No, and
guessing.
that's the big thing is I feel like I pushed that chassis as far as it can go without starting tearing out and doing a solid rear axle and a bunch of other parts. Is a big issue that I'm running into is having twin turbo on there is some heating issues. So we're working on some designing some hood vents for it.
Okay.
You can go and buy hood vents, but I want my own. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to like combat a little bit of high IATs at idle. Like they skyrocket because it's a tight fit underneath that hood.
That's the challenge with any turbo engine. You're creating so much heat under the hood that your engine just sucks it all in.
Yep, try to get it out of there. It's either that or go with no hood, which
Yeah.
I can see it happening. So
yeah, might attract a little more attention. And we got
negative attention, positive attention, either way.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you use that BMW for? Just cruising around, or do you take it to the drag strip, or
so I can't take it to the drag strip unless I put a roll cage a roll cage in there, roll bar.
Right.
So an HRA is anything a convertible can't run under a 13-second. And unless I slam on the brakes at the 8th, there's no way that car is going to run under a 13.
Right.
It could run close to a 13 when I just had the cam in there. Right. Now it's twin turbo. It's I easily the thing on 5 pounds of boost should be able to do 11.
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
so
I didn't realize there's different rules for convertibles, but yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and I kind of I like keeping it as stock as it already is. Like with Eric's 240, he's got a roll cage in there, and that thing is a pain for anybody to get in the back seat. Yeah. I do like the fact that I could, take it for a ride, put the family in it. I got 2 girls, they can hop in the back seat. I don't have to drop the top so they can jump over.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, it's kind of, I fight the urge to want to do that to it.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting some comments in the chat here. Hugh has commented a bunch, but yeah, it says people have LS swapped bar stools. So
go-karts.
Yeah. And we got Swaps Performance in the chat. Welcome. Let's go back to Eric since he's back on. Tell us about that 240 SX project.
Yeah, so I bought that probably, 11, 12 years ago or so. And I got it from a guy out of Milwaukee. He did a lot of autocross racing with it. It actually had a RB20, which is an inline 6-cylinder turbo. And that's a Japanese engine. So it didn't come in any of the US 240s. And it was kind of cool because it was a Nissan. It was unique, but it was untuned, and it was hard to find somebody that could tune it back then. So I started looking at LS swaps and kind of made up my mind that that's what I wanted to do, and found one online that somebody had already pulled from a junkyard and was selling cheap. So I just picked that up and then slowly started building that engine until it was ready to go in the car. And then it was, I think, Black Friday, probably 3 years maybe after I bought it, 3-4 years, and I bought a whole Sicky swap kit for it. So headers, motor mount, trans mount. What else was there? Basically everything, and then it came with a wiring specialties harness, so everything was plug and play. Dropped the motor in, bolted it up, plugged in the wiring harness, and just had to disable the anti-theft in the ECU, and then it would fire right up.
Oh, nice. So I kind of have in my mind that it's harder to swap an LS into like an import. And Dan was talking about the challenges of getting everything to fit in the hood. Like, how was the difficulty level of the 240 SX compared to like your Foxbody swap? Was it harder or easier or the same?
I would say they're different. The 240, I spent the money up front to make it easier. So everything was packaged and sent to me that was an LS swap kit. Just put it all together and drop it in. The only thing I had to worry about was hood clearance, and I was running an LS1 intake, so I had plenty of hood clearance. With the Mustang, it had a tube front end on it, so it had all the room in the world to work on. There was no room constraints. Then I got that 6-inch cowl hood, so then intake wasn't an issue. I mean, you could literally like stand in the engine bay while you were working on it. So Dan absolutely hates it because of how much room I have in my car versus his car.
Yes, sir.
But as far as ease of swap, I don't think the import was any harder just because so many companies already make swap kits. So, and unless you plan on building your own motor mounts and trans mounts and that kind of stuff, everything's readily available now just to basically plug and chug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say the biggest difference is the fact that the aftermarket for it. So if you're going to do it yourself, absolutely the Foxbody would have been 110 times easier than doing either the 240 or the BMW. Especially like you said, like we could stand in there with that motor and the turbos and everything in there. We could still fit a person in there. Tons and tons of room.
Yeah.
The 240, we talked about, options of forced induction on there, and there's no room. Like maybe an LSA. That's about it.
Right. Yeah. So what you mentioned, you kind of bought a complete kit to drop the LS into the 240. What does a kit like that cost? Like budget wise, is it more expensive to do a 240 swap than a Foxbody?
I think that kit probably ran me close to $4,000 for everything. So it was a big chunk of change. But I think for my first swap, I think it was perfect because it made the swap easy. I learned a lot of stuff along the way. And then when it came to the Mustang, we did it completely opposite. We didn't really buy any kit. We just started getting this piece and getting that piece and then putting this on and then seeing how that fit. And then it was completely different. And especially when it came to the wiring, originally that was factory ECU that I depinned using lt1swap.com.
Yeah.
Their instructions are fantastic, but I got rid of every wire that I didn't need. It's manual brakes, it's manual steering. There's nothing on the interior, so all that wiring was just able to be eliminated, and
Yeah.
I only had the bare necessities that I needed to run that car.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this was the same project, but you did a really good video series of reworking the factory harness and setting up an engine to run on the test stand and stuff. So
It was the same. It was the same harness, but it was when I took it out of my car when I switched to the Terminator X. I gave it to Dan, and Dan reworked that harness to go then
Actually,
on the El Camino.
yep. So he was talking about his DIY. That one's on the burnout engine that we haven't used yet. Hold my beer.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that project. Tell us a little bit about that.
So after we blew up, well, after I made some comical mistakes with some thread sealant on the fuel system and hydro locked an injector, I turned one of my connecting rods into a Bluetooth connecting rod, and it wanted to say hi to everybody on the outside of the block, so it put a little freedom window on the side.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to just throw it away. And I was like, well, I can go get another rod. So I got another rod. I was like, rod's really the only thing that's wrong. And then it punched a hole in the skirt.
Right.
So I said, I just kind of like drilled out the cracks in the skirt, and I put about 5 pounds of JB Weld into it. And then put the motor back together. So I was like, okay, it seems like it's still good. And that was on the fire up with that the wire harness.
Yep.
Was the blown up engine. So it still runs. It doesn't leak oil or nothing. Yeah. So we said it's probably not going to last forever. I do think that eventually it will heat cycle enough that the crack will follow its way up to the cylinder wall and then big boom. Yeah. But we want to put it on a burnout engine or a burnout car.
Okay.
And then see how long it lasts at about 6,000 RPM.
Nice. So do you guys have a car picked out already for that to go in, or?
Not yet. We were wanting to do it for Cletus and Cars this past year, but it didn't happen. And hopefully we could pick something cheap up. Like, if it's free, it's for me cheap. And
Yeah.
just like, I want to weld some solid mounts. I want to just do the whole thing, just throw it in there and just like as dirtbag as possible.
Yeah.
Weld my own drive shaft for it. The one that's going to be like walking like about a foot. And, just
Nice.
build something that can burn the tires off, and we'll see what happens. He also has a couple diesel turbos.
Oh, nice.
Maybe we put one of those on there. We might be able to get to spool at about 6,000 RPM. We'll see.
Yeah,
Actually,
I think
go
one of
ahead.
them's 108 millimeter, and I think the other one was 80 something millimeters. So they're absolutely ridiculously huge.
Comically huge, but it would be great. Just have it sitting out the hood.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. And Carl with Swaps Performance says, "Are you guys coming to LS Fest? The track is filling already. I'm way too far away to make art, but you guys have any plans going to LS Fest in Kentucky?"
It's one of the events that we've talked about wanting to go to, but we just haven't been able to commit to it yet. It's definitely on the radar, and I hope in the next couple of years it's definitely one that we can attend.
Yep.
Yeah. I probably won't ever make it to the one in Kentucky, but I'm kind of hoping to make it to the LS Fest West in Las Vegas next spring. But I see Hugh's got a couple questions here. He's building a Gen 4 6-liter. Is it worth building a 6.2 or stay with a 6-liter? Depends on your budget. For my money, I'd go with a 6-liter. I don't know. What do you 815 guys think about 6-liter versus the 6.2?
So that's an interesting one because I have a 6.0 block and a 6.2 rotating assembly. So I'm actually going to try and get that board over and run the 6.2 assembly and basically make a cast version of the LS there. So it'd be a cast version 6.2.
Nice.
Or an iron version, I should say.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that combination before, but I'd be looking forward to following that project.
Yeah, I got the block was sitting in my buddy's garage, and he just wanted to get rid of it. And actually, we did a TikTok video on it, and we were just using a 3-jaw hone to clean up the cylinders. It was rusty. We knew we were going to bore it over, and I had never used a 3-jaw hone before, so I said, let's give it a shot. We're not going to hurt it, right?
Yeah.
And TikTok went absolutely crazy on us on how we were doing it. We were doing it all wrong. We were going to ruin it, but nobody knew that the plan was to have it machined over for that 6.2. But yeah, TikTok just they came charging at me for that one.
Yeah, TikTok is pretty crazy. We'll get into the social media stuff in a bit here, but yeah, it seems like if the algorithm picks up your video or whatever, it goes wild.
Yeah.
Hugh says he's heard 6-liter iron blocks can be built to a 4065 6.2, but not the aluminum block. I'm actually not sure about that. I don't know much about the 6.2 myself, but
well, what I do know is they say with the 6-liter, the iron block, going to a 6.2 is the maximum you can run them, and they would not suggest boosting it. So I could see why they would say the 6.2 aluminum block shouldn't be. Plus, that's a sleeve motor, so you'd probably be running out of the sleeve by that time.
Yeah, you might be
pretty much into the aluminum by that.
Might be running pretty thin on material. And Swap says your trim ring is on my buddy's car. He put it in his last video.
Yes, he did. I saw that. I haven't got to watch the full video, but I definitely saw that he had tagged us in that video. So yeah, that's pretty cool to see. We've got what I think 44, 45, somewhere in that range trim rings on cars now.
That's cool. Well, let's talk about that a little more. So, like, how did you design that product? How did you come up with the idea for a trim ring? Did you just think it was a good idea and then hop into CAD and design it yourself, or did you have to hire out the design process? Or tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so I had saw a while back somebody that had made one, and I couldn't remember who it was. And I knew with where we had to mount the intercooler that we were going to need air in there. That bumper was going to block the majority of the air. So I said I want a trim ring for it. So I searched keywords and I couldn't figure out how to find the one that I had saw for sale. So I finally got frustrated and said, you know what? I'll just make my own. So I do CAD work through my job sometimes. So I have a little bit of experience doing that. So I just took some basic measurements on the front of the bumper, height, width kind of thing, and then started drawing it out. And one of my buddies that lives just a couple blocks from me has a CNC plasma cutter.
Oh,
So I
nice.
said, hey, I want one of these. Here's the file. Do you think you can cut it for me? And he said, sure. So he went ahead and cut it. And then we got it all cleaned up, deburred and painted and put on the car. And I was really happy with it. So I posted some pictures and put it in a few groups. And then I started having people ask me, hey, are you selling those? Hey, how much? Where can I get one? And then I reached back out to my buddy and said, hey, is this something that you want to do? Would you be wanting to make a bunch of these? And he actually said, no. I kind of like doing the one-off thing. The more production type thing isn't really what I'm looking to do. So I did a little research and found another company that could actually laser cut them for me. And so they've been cutting them for me, and you can't see because it's blurred out here, but right behind me there's a rack of where I keep them all just right here in my basement. And I've got a bunch of boxes, and when somebody orders one, I come down here, package it up, and try to get it shipped out usually next day.
Nice. So yeah, if anybody who sees this is looking for trim rings, make sure to hit Eric up on
Yeah, so we've got two different versions on the Foxbody. I've done some custom ones outside of those two for some people. I did one for a guy on a G body, and then I did one for my buddy on his new Edge, and then I started selling new Edge ones, and then we just did a new version of the new Edge one that's actually just a little bit shorter. And then I had one guy take one and run it on an SN95. So they're actually on a bunch of different chassis right now.
Perfect. And Dale Schwartz is in the chat. He says you guys are about 30 minutes from where he lives in Illinois.
Oh, very cool.
We had him on here a couple weeks ago.
Lives or lived? Does he still live there?
Oh, he says where I lived in Illinois. Yeah, he's down further south there somewhere now. But.
Gotcha.
So back to those trim rings, like what the software you use, was it like Fusion 360, or I'm trying to, like, if I wanted to build something like that myself, what software would I need?
Yeah, so at work I use a version of Creo. Okay. And at home, I use Fusion 360. So there was a little bit of learning curve going from one software to another. But Dan and I have both been kind of playing around with Fusion 360, and we're making progress on it. It's very simple to use, and it can be very powerful. But I know they have a paid version too that my buddy that actually did the CNC plasma cut of the first trim ring, he's got the paid version, and I know it can do even a little more. So if we get to a point down the road where we need a little more, power out of the software, we might look at upgrading into the paid version. But right now, Fusion 360, even just the free version, is great to play around with and just get your feet wet.
Yeah, I definitely want to download that and play around with it. You mentioned that the first ones were like plasma cut, and then you switched to laser cutting. Was there much of a difference in quality or cost, or was there much of a difference between the plasma and the laser?
Well, the plasma one was a steel cut one. So the one that's actually on my car is steel.
Okay.
The laser cut ones that I'm selling now are aluminum, so they're a little bit lighter weight. The laser cut's much better, so the diameters for the rivets are much more accurate. So on mine, the plasma cutter struggled to get the right size diameter, so I had to do a little drilling and get those to size so that I could rivet them on. So the laser cutting is much more accurate, and it produces a better product in the end.
Right. And is laser cutting a lot more expensive than plasma cutting?
It's not really that bad. So I don't know what it costs for him to plasma cut as far as, if Hugh was to do that like production style for me. But the laser cut stuff in aluminum is very affordable actually.
Nice. Cool. And I see Big Block 402 is in the chat saying hi to you.
What's up, Big Block? He is one of the guys that was in our Volvo build, which I'm sure we'll talk about here at some point.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a bit. While we're on the topic of products and stuff, I was noticing on your website you had advertised a power steering mount for a BMW. Is that still something you offer?
Yep. So Dan can kind of talk about how we got started on that, but same thing. It was something that he had, and I had the CAD ability, and we just ended up running from there. So I'll let him talk about how we got started on that.
First one.
Nice.
First one ever made. Plastic, ABS. So it started with, I did a little research when I was first doing the swap into the BMW. When I first got it running, it was no power steering, just manual, just forcing that thing. I don't know if anybody knows, BMWs are really like world renowned for their steering abilities. And a lot of that is because they have a lot of good ground contact on the front, which makes it almost impossible to steer without power steering assistance. So I decided I want power steering, so this is going to happen. So looking into it, I hear a lot of guys were complaining that when they use the LS power steering pump, that the power steering felt very lazy. And I started doing a little more research into it, found out. So the LS power steering pump from like the F-Body or the Corvette maxes out somewhere, let's say it was like 1,200 PSI to 1,300, where the BMW is closer to 2,000 PSI. So I wanted to make the OEM BMW one I had fit this build, and I looked at it, and the mount that they had was actually almost perfect. I just needed some spacers. So the first iteration of it, I don't know if I have it sitting around here somewhere. It's probably somewhere. Was just the flat bracket that they had with some extra holes drilled into it, and then I made some standoffs or some spacers for it. So when Eric started doing a lot of the CAD design, I told him, well, I want to do the same thing for the power steering pump because I want something that's a lot more stout and actually more than eyeballed. Where I did a pretty good job, I think, with it. And after we did a lot of the designs, I went back and measured my original setup, and I was only like 20, 30 thou off where it actually needed to be. So the belts were like perfectly aligned.
Yeah.
So I got it pretty close, but we did a lot of work to make this fit perfectly and be really good alignment with it. And I decided to built it, put it on my car. I took some pictures of it. Went to the BMW LS swap group, and it kind of exploded. Everyone's like, how much would you sell this to me for? I was like, I don't know. Let me see what it cost me to make it. And then, a little bit for me. So fast forward, I think I've sold about 50 of these, and they're in about 4 different countries.
Oh, wow.
I've sent them out to Australia. I've sent multiples out to Canada. There's a whole drifting group out there that keeps buying them from me.
Oh, cool.
But I think I got one out in Finland, and like they're all over the place. Still selling them.
Nice. So do you have to put like a different pulley on it or anything?
Nope. The OEM pulley, that was the weird thing, was a 6-rib pulley. So
oh, wow. So
yep. Just have to use the E36 pump. And we were doing it for like a Corvette accessory at one point, but ran into some issues, like depending on what people were running and pulley sizes and some of the idler pulleys, it started rubbing the belt. So I said, you know what, we're not going to make this one anymore until this gets figured out. So right now it's only for F-body and truck accessories.
Okay. And Hugh posted up in the chat. He just sent you guys a message for a trim ring, so maybe we might have sold one for you or something.
Awesome. I'll definitely respond once we get done here with the live.
Cool.
But Dan had mentioned the first version of the BMW power steering adapter was 3D printed, so you
Oh,
can't
cool.
see it here, but right next to me I do have a 3D printer. So anytime we're trying to make something new and we don't know if it's going to work, just throw it on the 3D printer here and print out the first version and see how it fits. And I'm glad we did, because when we were doing some of the measurements, I mixed up two numbers.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the actual first version, which isn't the one he has, the
Right.
very first one was the wrong design. So one hole was in the wrong location. So having the 3D printer is huge to be able to catch mistakes like that, because if
Yeah.
we sent it out to be made, boy, we would have been in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. So what's a 3D printer like that worth? That's another thing I'd kind of like to experiment with at some point down the road.
Yeah, so I have the Ender 3 made by Creality, and
Okay.
it's probably 250 US dollars. It's
Oh,
very
wow.
affordable. They've got newer versions which are much bigger, and those go up in price, but the Ender 3 is what you see a lot of people use at home. And there's a free slicing software, and you have to basically slice your 3D model for the printer to be able to lay down the different layers.
Okay.
So there's a free software that you can do with that. There's websites where you can download models that people have already created. So if you see something that you want, you don't have to model it up yourself. You can just download it, throw it in your slicer, and start printing it. Or if you have Fusion 360, then you can start designing your own stuff to print too.
That's cool. I might have to chat with you guys offline a little more about that. But how long does it take, like, to print that little power steering pump bracket for the first time? How long does that process take?
So the thickness on the ones that we actually produce, what, the first ones were at half an inch, Dan, and now they're 3/8.
I think the very first one you did for me was like paper thin, and that's the one where we made the mistake on it. And then this one is 3/4.
Okay. Yep. So the paper thin one, that one was only maybe an eighth of an inch just to check hole locations, and that maybe took hour and a half, 2 hours. And then when you start making the full size one, it was probably, I'd say, a solid 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, yeah. So it's
So
not.
still not horrible, though, to be
Yeah.
able to have something go from design to something in your hands in that short amount of time. And that's really the benefit of the 3D printers.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. So let's bounce it back to Dan for a second. The one project vehicle that we haven't talked about yet is the El Camino. And Eric said, you're the expert on that thing. So tell us about that car.
So my brother-in-law is a El Camino fanatic. He loves them. His dad had them. He had them, and he's been wanting one for a long time. When I first met him, he had one, and then got rid of that and just hadn't had one for a long time. And he was just looking for one. Finally finds one, and I said, "Hey, let's LS swap it." So
Yeah.
it took a little convincing. It wasn't very much convincing, but it was a little bit. And he's like, "Yeah, let's do this." He asked me what it was going to cost, and that's like the biggest thing we get from everybody is how much does an LS swap cost? And it's like it all depends on what you want. So I told him, I said, quick and dirty, we can do it for $1,000. I mean, if you really, really want to, we're just replacing a small block Chevy with a TH350, and we're just upgrading it to an LS. But he wanted a little bit more than that. So we ended up scoring a 6-liter from the local pick and pull. And we got it home and found out that one of the cylinders had some rust in it.
Okay.
So there was some pitting in there that was deeper than a hone would take out. So we ended up having it bored 30 over, cleaned it just perfectly. And we did a full rebuild, bearings, rings, the works, like not a full rebuild, but close enough. So all the bearings look good. So it was just bearing swap for a lot of it. new rings, of course, because of new pistons,
Yeah.
but everything else. And then we started talking about a cam. We were originally going to leave it alone because he's not looking for like a ton of power or anything. He just wanted a little more power and a lot more reliability out of it. So I had he heard my car running before, and he liked the sound of that. And I like showed him a bunch of YouTube videos of some cams and cars and everything. And the next day he's like, it has to have a cam in it. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, it's a different feeling. It's a different sound. The cam just makes all the difference. So we ended up getting a Texas Speed and Performance, their low lift truck cam,
Okay.
which they say it's on a 5.3 is a 50 horsepower gain on the dyno.
Oh, nice.
So that's not bad. It's a little pickup on there. So it's a little bit more than a 6-liter.
Yeah.
So we ended up just doing that. We did it all on the channel. So we stripped it all the way down to a bare block. We had it bored over. We rebuilt it. I decked the heads myself. I polished the heads.
Right.
But they're perfectly flat. Compression's perfect. So if anybody tells you can't do it in your own basement, they're lying to you.
Right.
It might be a little better to have a professional do it, but it could be done.
Yeah.
But we just kept the original TH350 in there. I modified a flex plate off the 6-liter to fit it, and pretty much that's about all that's into it.
So what does it take to modify that flex plate? Is that just one of the ones where you got to oval out the holes a little bit?
Yeah, they're about I want to say 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch off, like more towards the center.
Right.
That's the only difference.
That TH350 is holding up just fine behind the 6-liter?
Yep, the rear end was another story.
Right. Yeah, I saw the video on that. Looked like she grenaded a little bit on you.
And the Foxbody's still running a TH350 as well.
Oh, really? He's launched that thing.
Yeah.
Yep, it's got a trans brake and a reverse manual valve body on it, but it's still just a TH350. It came out of I think it was a Malibu or a G-body drag car from another local person. So they hold up fine. I do have a TH400 bone stock sitting in the garage just in case.
Yeah, as a backup for it.
Yeah, he's done a couple launches on that on the TH350, and we pulled some of the fluid the other day, and it's still bright pink.
Oh, nice.
So it's holding up.
Yeah, and Big Block 402 says he's still got a TH350 behind his mild Big Block, so maybe you guys are a little too quick to do the 4L80E swap, or like you guys seem to.
Hey, I like my overdrive.
Yeah, for sure. Overdrive is always a good thing. But Big Block 402 says it was built in 96, though, so time to freshen it up.
Yeah, it might be about time.
Yeah, especially if you're putting some horsepower through it, she's probably due. But anybody who's been doing a car project in this day and age has run into like supply chain issues. Has that been much of a problem for you on the projects you've been doing recently? Like, I know you mentioned that you're waiting on a camshaft, but has there been other stuff that?
Yeah, and waiting on a camshaft is more of me waiting on funds for a camshaft. Just because I've got the 2 cars that I'm working on, and then I've got a Silverado and a Harley, so I've got things that take up my money all around.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no. I know a lot of people had problems getting the Terminator X.
Right.
I ordered mine from Summit and got it in 2 days. So everything I heard, it was the Ford 5.0 Terminator X's that people were having a hard time. But like I said, I got mine in just a couple days, and I haven't had any issues on. I don't think any other parts that I've ordered. I don't think you have either, have you, Dan?
No, everything I've got from China came really fast.
Yeah, perfect. So one of the things you guys have got like 4 LS swaps under your belt all together. And there's a lot of different skills needed in that, like welding and fabricating and wiring and electrical and tuning. Like, have you guys done all of that yourself, or have you hired any of that out?
So the only thing that we haven't done is had that 6.0 board over on the El Camino.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's the only thing that we haven't physically done ourselves. Everything else has been between my garage, Dan's garage, and his brother-in-law's garage. We've done everything in one of those three garages.
That's cool. So that's got to feel pretty good, like for you to take a bare Mustang shell and have done like all the work yourself and to get that thing up and rolling down the road. Hey.
Yeah, and when we took it to the drag strip after the first year with just the 6 liter, no turbos or nothing on it, and I made that first pass, you would have thought I went single digits if you saw me inside the car. I was screaming, I was so excited, and I pulled back around and it was like a 14.0, and I didn't care because
Yeah.
I literally put that whole thing together, and the fact that it made it down on the return road and back to where I parked was a huge win for me.
That's awesome. I love it.
Especially if you would have saw some of the welds I laid down on that thing. I was waiting for those bars to just come flying out the bottom. Oh.
Yeah, and our early day welds are definitely not as good as our more recent welds.
Yeah.
Even the tires on the Foxbody, they had a date like written in like grease pen of 97.
Oh,
So
wow.
everything that made that car go down the track was, again, it was an accomplishment. I thought, yeah, I was on top of the world on that 14.0 pass, and we turned around, and I think we got, what'd we end up with? A high 13 before somebody oiled the track down.
Spinning off the line and short shifting.
Nice.
Yep.
Had a wrong tack reading on there, and I pulled the data log when he got back. I was like, man, you're shifting at like 5,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think, no, actually, the 14, I think you were shifting at 4,500. I was like,
And
no, go up, up, up.
Yeah, and that was only that was the third pass I made, and it was, I mean, I drove it around the block once, maybe twice, even before that. So I had absolutely zero seat time in it. And when I watched the replay, even letting out, I was a car or more ahead, or before the cones of even where the marker was. So between the short shifting and letting out early, I mean, we guessed that the car bone stock 6 liter probably could have ran somewhere in the 12s had we had more seat time, more time at the track and all that. But I think it was a November day in the Midwest, and it was just happened to be a nice day, and I said, let's do it. Why not?
Yeah, perfect. Good air and stuff, eh?
Yeah.
So did you guys do the tuning and everything yourself?
Tuning.
Yeah. So we've kind of done the base tune. Dan's done most of the tuning. I, disable the VATs, and I can check a couple boxes or
choose. He knows how to steal a car.
That's all you need, really.
I can choose my injectors, and I can pick a couple things from a list. But beyond that, for me, the Terminator now has got a learning mode, so it's done most of that. But HP tuner wise, Dan's done much more playing around with that than I have.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that now that you've done a car with Terminator and a car with the stock computer and a reworked harness for the next project. Which way are you going to go?
Probably Holly, or I was actually looking at like a Micro Squirt. I kind of want to check out their stuff. I know it's nowhere near as good as Holly, but I just want to try it.
Yeah.
Just to see what it's about. I just want to have different ECUs under my belt.
Yeah, for sure.
The Terminator X, the first time it fired up, was a night and day difference from the way the Mustang started.
Yeah.
Or any of the cars started for that matter. And the funny thing is, one of his grounds was loose and rusted out, and it was only running on 4 cylinders, and it was still running better than any of the other cars we did the first fire up on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, okay. It's a 4 cylinders, and it still runs buttery smooth.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's like I hated it even more.
Yeah, I haven't used the Holly yet myself, but definitely want to try it on a future.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I really like it. I know if you get into hardcore racing, there are some limitations that the Terminator X has versus like a Holly Dominator or stuff like that. But for the
number of inputs and stuff, eh?
Yep. And the Terminator X has another input-output box now that you can add onto it.
Okay.
But for most of us that are just building weekend cruisers or, occasional track cars, the Terminator X is perfectly fine.
Yeah, cool. definitely want to give that a try. So now that you guys have these LS swaps under your belt, you got any advice for someone who's never done it before to make the process easier?
Run away.
Don't do it.
The biggest thing for me that I've learned is just to do it. Just get your hands in there. Everything that's on an LS is replaceable. You
Right.
screw something up, you can go to the junkyard, you can go to O'Reilly's, you can go anywhere and pick up parts. So just don't be afraid to dig in. I know before I did my first LS, I was like a body guy. So in high school, I drove Hondas and body kits, and it was all about the look of it. And the older I got, I wanted more of the speed. I wanted more stuff. So I had never really done anything engine related. So the LS is where I started, and that's just kind of where I've stuck ever since. Not that I won't build a Coyote or a Hemi, down the road, but you can't get them for what you can pull an LS out of your local pick and pull.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough to beat the horsepower per dollar of the LS.
Absolutely. That's always my biggest comeback is everyone's like, oh, well, you can put 1,000 horsepower through a Coyote. Not for the dollar amount you can put it through an LS. Absolutely not.
And you can't go to your pick and pull and find a Coyote for $300.
Right. Yeah, I think our last 2 or 3 6-liters we've got for about $400 out of the junkyard.
Well, the one that's in the Foxbody now was like 300, I think, but that was the last time they ever did the 60% off, and we ended up pulling, or 40%. Yeah,
yep.
We paid 60%. Yeah, and we ended up pulling that and the 4L80, and I bought the transmission, he bought the engine.
Oh wow, yeah, those discount days are pretty sweet.
They don't do them anymore.
Yeah, not here at least.
Oh, okay.
They said they have no plans on bringing it back.
Oh well, I think they still have them around here.
I might have to head that way.
Yeah, it's a long drive. So any mistakes that a first timer should avoid when doing an LS swap?
I'm not sure. Nothing that I can really think of. I mean,
I could say don't go overboard. It's really, really easy to go overboard. Like my first swap, it was I wanted to learn to do a lot of the stuff, and it was full rebuild. It was I sent the block out. I had it board 30 over, so it was a 5.3 30 over. I replaced a bunch of stuff on there. I mean, I mostly refreshed everything on there, but I spent some money to replace a lot of things that in the end, I could have just reused a lot of the stuff. And after blowing the thing up, because, I mean, the engine would have lasted fine had I not hydro-locked an injector.
Right.
But
allegedly,
no. Well, it did hydro-lock. I had nothing to do with the hydro-locking, though.
Right.
As long as Snake Eater Performance is aware. So swapping it out to the 6-liter, we grabbed that thing. I threw some rings and bearings at it. I, ran the heads over a flat piece of board with some sandpaper on it.
Yeah.
And slapped it together, and it runs just as good, if not better, than the 5.3 that I put a bunch of money into.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could say, don't go overboard. You're not going to reinvent the LS better than GM already did it. Yeah. It was already going 300, 400,000 miles in the car that you pulled it from. You're not going to do it better than they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So even though it wasn't the engine's fault, the funny thing is both the 240 and the Mustang have 200,000 mile engines that just got regasketed. They've never been torn farther down than a rotating assembly. And Dan's engine was start to finish fully rebuilt, and it was the first one to throw a rod.
And I can vouch for the fact that his valve stem seals have never been replaced or anything like that. He has to drive behind me from now on. He takes care of all the mosquitoes, though.
Yeah, exactly. Smoking them out.
And we had enough parts when we started talking about doing this burnout engine after it blew up. I mean, between him and I, the amount of spare parts we had, we had to grab a couple things from the junkyard. Yeah, I think that was the main thing. Otherwise, we had all the parts, and and we still have tons of extra parts. I know my garage and basement is full of parts. I know he's got parts in his garage. So the fact that whether you get a 5.3, a 6.0, a 4.8, I mean, you can use the parts almost interchangeably. So
Yeah, it's like putting Legos together. It's beautiful. So got a couple comments here. Big Block 402 says $6,000 for Gen 2 6R80. Not economically smart, but yeah, that's one thing that the LSs aren't very unique, but tough to beat in terms of dollars. And then Hugh Robinson says comparing the LS to like a 5-liter Coyote cost is like $400 versus $3,500. So that's definitely, the Fords are more expensive for sure.
yeah, and we get all kinds of people that, are like, hey, LS has already been done, blah blah blah, and at the end of the day, and I'm sure Dan feels the same way. I mean, we're car guys. We'll wrench on anything.
Yeah,
I will build any engine that somebody puts in front of me. Just like we had mentioned, though, the fact that you can go pull an LS from the pick and pull for $400, throw a $250 Rock Auto gasket kit on it and run it, I mean, you can't beat that.
yeah, exactly. And it's, for me, it's not a brand loyalty thing. Like behind the garage door there, I've got a Ford, a Dodge, and a Chev. But when it comes time to wrenching in the garage, you can't beat an LS.
That's right.
Right.
Say both my dailies, my wife's and mine, both Rams, Mopar or no car, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'll build a Mopar too. You can give me one, I'll go ahead and build it.
Yeah, just better give you the checkbook to go along with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So we've been going for an hour here and still haven't. Do you guys got time to stick around for a bit longer?
Yeah, I have tomorrow off.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm good. It looks like my lagging issues have finally gone past. So
That's good. That was annoying.
yeah, computers aren't my thing.
yeah.
Talk to your IT guy about that.
I can guess who that is.
That would be Mr. Dan there.
Yeah. So going back to the LS swaps things, I know we're all about doing things cheap, and my whole channel is called Low Buck. But is there any area you wouldn't cheap out, like injectors and torque converters, or any place you wouldn't take shortcuts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple like safety pieces that I always tell people to buy, and one of them is just it's a little clip that sits over the oil pump pickup tube because
Okay.
there's only the one bolt in it. I
Right.
don't know that that's really not cheaping out, but it's one of those things where if I'm taking an oil pan off, I'm
Yeah.
putting that brace on every time because it's a $20 brace and it holds that pickup tube in place.
Yeah.
And it just, at the end of the day, it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But
And that's such a common failure point, eh? Like, why not do it if you've got the pan off?
yeah, but other than that, for me, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot that I've spent a ton of money on, at least with the Mustang. I mean, upgrading to the Terminator and stuff like that. But otherwise, I'll run pretty much whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best part about the LS is you can cheap out. You
Yeah.
can buy everything cheap. You
Yeah.
can buy everything right off the Rock Auto shelves for it. There's
Yeah.
no need to go over and above on there. Everything will do it. Like
Yeah.
the BMW, I'm running decapped injectors on it. Like
Yeah.
I could run, I was running better ones than that, and it was running like crap. I
Yeah.
would go to decapped injectors and spent like half the price, and it's running way better than it ever has.
Yeah. And have the decapped injectors given you any trouble at all?
I haven't even run like 50% of their duty cycle yet, and I'm running 5 psi on it, and I was
Oh,
keeping up with a 500 horsepower Durango.
Yeah.
So
And so did you send them out to get them flow tested, or?
no, I got them from Hunter Tune, so they're already done. So I just
Okay.
paid him $175, and he shipped them to my door.
Cool. That's not a bad deal. I know you can't get stock injectors for cheaper than that at like Rock Auto, so that's
Exactly.
a pretty decent deal. Hugh says he's calling it a night, so thanks for joining us.
Yep. See you later.
Let's talk about that Volvo group build that I saw on your channel. How did you get involved in that deal?
So we started getting into some live streams, and it was a good way for us to reach out and meet other, automotive channels in general. And I don't remember which live stream we were on. We've been on Destroyer 1320, and we're on a bunch of other ones. And I just think through the different groups, there was a core group of people that you seen kind of supporting all these different live streams. And we ended up getting connected with Stuff with Cletus. Um, and he was the one that really kind of organized the whole build.
Okay.
Um, so it was Stuff with Cletus, Wasted Talent Fabrications, Dudes with Wrenches. Those three channels were on a live stream together. I wasn't on this one. I think there were some other guys on it. But if you don't know, Dudes with Wrenches has a bunch of old cars. He's got a field of old cars. So
Yeah.
he was talking about, hey, what should I build next? What should be my next build as himself? And a lot of people wanted him to do this. I think it was a '68 Suburban that he had. But Wasted Talent, he's kind of an import guy. He's got a 350Z that's LS swapped, and he's doing a WRX wagon that's LS swapped.
Oh,
So
cool.
he saw this Volvo sitting out in the field, and he's like, "Hey, how about we, do an LS swap on the Volvo?" And Dudes with Wrenches is kind of an old school, 350,
Great.
454. He's like, I don't want to build a Volvo.
Yeah.
And he kind of told the story of how he got it. It was kind of left on the side of the road, and um, he's all about rescuing cars. He doesn't want to see anything get scrapped out. So he grabbed it, put it on his property, and there it sat. And then so kind of a few more weeks of live streams went along, and they kind of convinced him, hey, let's do a group build where everybody gets together, and you bring the Volvo, and Stuff with Cletus said he'd supply the engine, and we'd build it. And at some point I ended up in the comments of one of the live streams, and they're like, well, here's an LS guy.
Yeah.
So that I started getting on the live streams and started talking, and I've given some of the advice on some of the LSs we've done, and what
Yeah.
parts should we get and what do we need. And next thing we know, it was going to be in Iowa, and then it was going to be in, I don't remember, Minnesota. It kind of moved around
Right.
because there was a couple different people that were going to actually host the build, and it ended up being down in Arkansas where Stuff with Cletus lives, and it was in a motorcycle shop. It was equivalent to maybe what, two-car garage, I think,
Oh, wow.
and that was 113 cycles, and they're like, I don't know, a couple blocks from each other. Stuff with Cletus and 113, and we went down there and we built that thing in five days.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
So Dudes with Wrenches brought the Volvo from western Iowa. Basically, I think it was like right at the Nebraska border is where he was. He
Okay.
hauled that all the way to Arkansas. Myself and one of my other buddies, because Dan couldn't make it, we drove from northern Illinois down to Arkansas. And I think it was, what was it, 12, 13-hour drive, I think.
Oh, wow.
And then one other set of guys drove from Canada all the way down to Arkansas as well.
Oh, wow. Well,
And,
what channel or
uh,
whatever are they associated?
Mongrel's Garage.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of his channel. Yeah.
Yep. So, and then Big Block was down there,
Oh, nice.
and we got there. I think most of us showed up on Sunday, and everybody was real eager. We pushed the car in the garage. We started pulling things apart, and by the end of the night, we kind of had the engine just sitting in there with the cherry picker in place, and we had ideas bouncing off of everybody. This is what we're gonna do, and
Right.
then Monday morning came, and we started working, and it was Monday morning to Monday night, Tuesday morning to, I mean, it was the entire day for the whole week. And
Oh, wow.
I don't think any of us anticipated that it was really going to take that much time, but to do it start to finish, we built our motor mounts from scratch. We built transmission mount from scratch. We built a fuel cell containment from scratch. We built headers, or the exhaust from, just pieces of exhaust laying around the shop. I mean, we built everything. There was no, let's buy this kit
Right.
and put it in the Volvo. It was, we built everything from scratch, other than the Terminator, because we didn't want to deal with any wiring issues.
Right.
But everything else was just, like I said, we built it right there.
Yeah. That's really cool. And you said 5 days from start to finish?
So we got there Sunday, and we started early, which we all called day 0. That was the day everybody was arriving. But
Yeah.
when you get, what was there, 8 different channels together, they're gonna start working. There was nobody was not gonna start working that first day.
Yeah.
And it was 12:05, I think, on Saturday morning when it fired for the first time.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So it really was 5 full days, morning to night. We got up every morning, went to the shop. I mean, some mornings we were, hitting it hard, and some mornings we were dragging our butts in there. But
Right.
we were in bed way late every night and up very early in the morning.
Yeah, that's cool. And so what kind of transmission did you use on that project?
4L80E.
Okay. Was that, were there any challenges getting that to fit in the tunnel?
100%.
Didn't look that bad from where I was.
Yeah. So we tried the massaging the firewall, and we couldn't get it hammering it big enough, and we ended up pulling the whole interior, which we didn't ever plan on doing. So dash, carpet, everything, pulled it out. We ended up having to cut it, hammer it back, and then patch it all back together to get it to fit. So when we talk about 5 days, I bet you we lost a solid day just pulling interior, cutting, stitch welding, seam sealing, and then putting the interior back together. It was easily one day of just that we didn't see coming.
Oh, wow.
And then the fuel cell was a whole nother project. So thankfully there was enough guys there that, we had somebody working on the transmission. We had a couple guys working on the fuel cell, and everybody got along awesome. I mean, it was absolutely a blast. Everybody was cool. Everybody worked together. There was no arguments. We had fun. We ate tons of food, and we
Nice.
built a car in 5 days. And honestly, there's not much better than that, right? You get that many people together and build a car. It's, even though it was so much work, it was so much fun, and it was an awesome experience that I wish everybody could have the opportunity to come together and build something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the kind of stuff like TV shows are made out of.
Yeah, and the funny thing is shortly after we got back and started putting our video series together, I'm actually editing up our last day right now to release that. But Vice Grip Garage basically put out a very similar series of doing something just like that.
Absolutely ripped us off.
Yeah,
that's probably it. Should be giving you credit.
Yeah, royalties.
Yeah, but no, it's always neat when you get like-minded guys. Like the problem I have in my town is nobody thinks the way I do. Like nobody's going to the junkyard and pulling engines, so it's cool when you can get a bunch of guys like that together.
Right, and we had all, we've all been on live streams, but none of us had met in person. So, I mean, we all walked into the same room, and it was like another live stream, except for you in person. I mean, everybody, it was just, I can't put into words how much fun it was. And I would do another one in a heartbeat. And I hope we can get together and do another build just like that.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if I could join it.
Any plans for that? Is anybody talking about doing another one?
There's definitely been talks. We want to do something not so difficult so that we can have some time to actually hang out and have fun and not spend the whole week building.
Yeah, we'll do a Silverado next.
Yeah, do a C10 or something easy.
No, I mean like a new one, like LS swap the silver.
Oh, there you go.
We've talked about doing like, some like off-road type build, or maybe doing an old classic car build. But I've also had other people reach out that have said, hey, I kind of want to do something similar. Where do I even begin?
Right.
So it's definitely piqued other people, and I think it's a cool opportunity. And we talked about doing the Danger Ranger down at the Freedom Factory this year, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, the time frame, we just couldn't get something built in time. And even thought, I mean, that'd be another awesome get together, is, pick up a Ranger and have a bunch of channels come together, and we'll, spend a weekend and rip the car apart, put a cage in it and build it up. And,
Yeah.
just there's so many opportunities to do something cool like that.
Yeah. And all of Cletus's events at the Freedom Factory there just look like an amazing time. I'd love to do that sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a blast at Cletus and Cars.
Right.
Not this year, but 21 when we
Yeah.
went.
Yeah. Right on.
That was amazing.
Yeah. So who got to keep the car once you guys had it all built?
So Dudes with Wrenches brought the car.
Right.
He basically donated it to Stuff with Cletus. Stuff with Cletus bought the engine, rebuilt the engine before we came down, and
Okay.
then he funded the entire build. So he
Oh,
paid for everything. He took us to lunch every day.
yeah.
We all kind of brought something for a dinner. But really, he bought all the parts and he paid for everything. So at the end of it, he ended up keeping the car.
Yeah, makes sense. So, and it was just NA, right? Not turbo or anything like that.
Yeah, we tried to convince him, but he wanted AC, and that was going to
Oh
take
yeah.
up too much room in the engine bay. And
Yeah.
last I knew, he still hasn't had AC in it yet. But
Yeah, that's the problem I'm running into with my truck as well. Once you go turbo, it's tough to fit the AC compressor in there. But
oh yeah,
I'm still.
neither of my cars have AC or heat. That's just robbing horsepower is all it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Just roll down the windows. Got a couple more guys joining in the chat. Joseph Moore is a regular on the live stream, and Leighton Motorsports saying what's up.
Hey,
So let's dive into the social media side a bit. Like, you guys have been wrenching on cars for quite a while. What made you decide to turn a camera on and start putting it up on YouTube?
so I actually was helping a buddy of mine who was building a Honda K Series powered C6 Corvette.
Oh wow.
He started this build, and I was just kind of helping out here and there. And he had posted a picture of the engine sitting in the chassis, and all of a sudden on 1320 and Hoonigans, this picture started popping up everywhere.
Right.
And I was like, hey, this is a really unique build. You need to get your name attached to this.
Exactly.
So I helped him get a Facebook, page together for it.
Yeah.
One of his other buddies helped him start the YouTube channel, and I helped run it and helped post and everything. And we had Instagram, and I'm like, this is kind of fun, posting stuff, interacting with people, but my stuff doesn't really fit with what he's got going on. He's pulling an LS out of something
Right.
and putting something in.
Yeah.
So me to go and share my cars on his platform didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I was headed to Florida, I think about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to make my own page. So I reached out to I think there was 4 of us or so that they were kind of helping out. And I'm like, hey, I'm all about helping. I'll continue to help, but I think I want to create my own page. I want to show off my stuff. Like, I like interacting with the fans. I like talking to people. I like networking, really.
Yep.
So I came up with the YouTube channel. I started that. And if you go way back, I could never figure out what to name it. I had like Eric, the LSX guy, was I think the very first name.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. I'm like, that's not really it. And honestly, I don't even remember how I landed on 815 LSX swaps. It came to me one day, I posted it, and I'm like, I think this is it. And then I created the Facebook, and then I created the Instagram, and I started posting the Mustang, because at that point the Mustang had an engine sitting in it, but it wasn't running, it wasn't wired, it was nothing. It was like the perfect time to let's do a build and let's put it on there. The 240 had already been done for a few years.
Yeah.
Dan's BMW was already done and running, but it wasn't turboed yet.
Right.
And I kind of reached out to him and I'm like, hey, let me post some pictures and some videos of your car on the page. Let's, post some pictures of the 240, the Mustang, and just kind of, I don't know what we're doing yet, but let's just start posting stuff. And then I kind of asked him, I'm like, do you want to kind of help with some of this stuff? Because, I'm just going at it and who knows where it's going to go. And, it's always better to have somebody else to bounce ideas off of and everything. And so then he kind of started helping in and he designed our logo and he started making some videos. And I think for the most part, I probably do the majority of the social media stuff.
Right.
And he'll take care of, like, now he's doing like the merchandise, our t-shirts and stuff, and helping with the videos and stuff like that. So for the most part it's worked really well, just kind of having him and I go back and forth, and the way we've kind of started everything out, it's just gone really well. And then TikTok kind of became a thing, and so I started one of those. And you can post the same vertical format video on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, YouTube Shorts. So you just kind of recycle it on all these different platforms.
Yeah. And that seems to be the content that's taken off right now, eh? Like the Reels and TikTok. Like we had Michael Narks on here a couple weeks ago, and he's having lots of success with the vertical video, eh? And the Reels and Shorts and that type of thing.
Yeah, and I had been doing pretty well, and I don't know, over the last week or so, I just can't gain any views on the YouTube Shorts. I mean, I was getting 3,000 views a night, and my last, I think 3 of them I posted now when I wake up in the morning have double digit. I mean, I'm lucky if they hit 20 views now. I'm not really sure, but
111 views, 416 views, and 25 views.
Yeah, and a lot of them I pull back down. If I wake up in the morning and they're not hitting, I'll pull them down and I'll wait a couple days and repost them.
Yeah.
But Instagram has been
changed so fast with the algorithm. Hey, like what worked 2 weeks ago isn't working today.
Yeah, Instagram has been pretty big though. I know Narks has been really liking Instagram.
Yeah.
He sends me different sounds to try to test out and stuff. So him and I probably message, man, I'd say if not every day, every couple days.
Yeah, he's definitely, and the success he's having with that drag and drive stuff is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dudes with Wrenches, he really blew up on his YouTube Shorts too. I mean, when we were down at the Volvo build, he was in the 500 subscribers, and I think now he's coming up on 60K.
Oh wow!
So he's really done well, and his videos are always very informative. I mean, I was talking to him last night, and I told him, I'm like, the knowledge that you have is just it's like nothing that I could ever even think of. I mean, you know things about cars that I would never even know to think about existed. So and he's able to put that into his shorts, and he's doing good, and I think it's well deserved. His stuff's very well.
No, that's awesome. Now, can you get monetized? Like, are your shorts monetized as well, or do you just get paid on the full length videos?
You get paid on the full length videos. There are shorts programs, but you have to get invited to those, and that's not something that we've done. We've got monetized on our full length videos, but you don't, your view hours do not count on shorts.
Oh, okay.
And you don't get monetized on your shorts.
Okay, so there's probably not, like, even though you've got lots of views on your shorts and stuff, like it's getting attention to you, but you're not making a whole bunch of money directly from it then, eh?
Correct. I always say that shorts bring in your subscribers, and your full-length videos have to keep your views coming in.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think it is a good mix to have both of them, but I don't think one of them, they don't really correlate to each other for the same same things. I think, like I said, your shorts will bring in your subscribers, but then you got to get that full length video content to keep people watching.
Yeah, makes sense. So you guys recently hit that 1,000 sub mark, and I think now you're around like 1,300 or something like that. So you guys
Yep.
would have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say today we hit that almighty 1320 number.
Oh, perfect. Right on. So, do you have any tips for a new car YouTuber who's starting out a channel and hasn't hit that monetization threshold yet?
It's all about consistency and shoving it in people's faces, unfortunately.
Right.
YouTube isn't going to promote yourself, so you've got to be out there just pushing it in front of people. So when we first started, I think we did a video, and then it was maybe a month or a couple months we'd get another video out. We really struggled with what what are we going to record, you know?
Right.
Every time you go to the garage, it feels silly to record this little bitty thing and that little bitty thing. But
Yeah.
as you get more comfortable, I need to record that, but I don't need to make a video on that. I need to record that and then record this and this and then
Yeah.
put it in one video.
Put it all together. Yeah.
So record everything you do.
Yeah.
Worst case is you don't use it, and
Yeah.
you wasted a little bit of time to set up, and um, so record everything, make consistent videos, shoot for once a week. And that's what we ended up doing. Probably what 6, 7, 8 months in to the
Yeah.
channel. I think we started hitting that. All right, every week we're gonna put out a video, and we're gonna do that. And then just don't be shy in front of the camera. I know when we look back, we were just talking about this the other day. When we look at our first videos, they were bad, and that's
Yeah.
where we all start. Everybody starts. If you go back to those videos, they're they're scripted. You don't know what to say. So I remember having a piece of paper and I memorized everything I typed out so that then I could tell the camera what I was trying to say, and you can see it comes off as scripted.
Yeah.
So but once you
Super
get
dry.
comfortable, yeah, talking in front of the camera, it's natural, and you can just be yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That was definitely a challenge for me, both the consistency, like I'll go a month or two putting out decent videos and then not upload a video for a month or two. But yeah, that's something I've really been working on, is getting a video, even if it's a live stream like this, up at least
Yeah.
getting some piece of content up once a week.
Yeah, and for us being in the Midwest, we've got bad winters, and I don't work in the garage a whole lot in the wintertime, so I don't get a whole lot of content. And
Yeah.
that's really when I started doing the podcasts.
Yeah.
So that's when I would do it through Zoom, because then I could get the video version. Well,
Right.
now I can upload the audio version to Spotify and Google and Apple Podcasts, but I can also put the video version on YouTube now.
Yeah.
So even though I don't have something going on in the garage, it's still that consistent once a week you can expect a video to come out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I started doing interviews like this too, is I'm not just filming my own stuff, I can tell other people's stories too and talk to other people who are doing the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of how our podcast started. It was just Dan and I, and it was just so Dan's been great with I come up with crazy ideas, and I'm like, Dan, do some computer stuff and figure out how to make this happen, the
Yeah.
website, the blog, he's no matter what I ask him to do, he always gets it done,
Yeah.
So the podcast was just one of those things. I'm like, hey, let's just do it. And same thing. The first one was scripted. I was
Yeah.
reading off of a Word document, and then the second one, it was just bullet points. So
Yeah.
it was okay. These are the topics I need to make sure I hit. And then we just kind of started talking to each other, kind of thing. And then we started, pulling in different guests, and I like that because, like you said, you can tell a story. How did you
Yeah.
get started doing YouTube? And just it's the conversation is so much more genuine when you're having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about you guys have a podcast, you're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. What's your favorite social media platform, or what are you having the most success with, or what are you focusing on for like the coming year or so as far as social media platforms?
So as far as number of followers or subscribers, TikTok really has the most.
Okay.
Um, but I like YouTube because for this reason here. I mean, I've met so many other channels that, I talk to on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Patina Pit Stop and Narcs and Dudes with Wrenches and Wasted Talent and our Volvo build. We've got a whole group chat, and just for the fact that I talk to those people as much as I talk to Dan, who's my neighbor.
Yeah.
So the fact that I've been able to meet cool people, and then probably Instagram would be my second, because I've met a lot of people on there, and that's really where I started forcing content on people. I
Right.
went out looking for hashtag LS swap, and
Yeah.
I'd start looking through pictures. I'm like, oh, this guy's got, some cool stuff, and follow them and like some of their stuff. And I spiraled into hours and then days and weeks and months just on Instagram following people.
Yeah.
But then if you're following people with the same interests, they're going to follow you back.
Yeah.
And then, you talk about, oh, hey, we've got a YouTube channel. Oh, I've got one too. And, you start that conversation and you just meet so many people. I've met, people in our town. Dan and I went and helped a guy that's doing an LS 240 that lived, 10 minutes from us.
Oh,
you
nice.
know we went and helped him with stuff, and there's people that are we got a RX-8 from a guy that was just a few hours from us. And
Oh, wow.
we've met all kinds of people that are near us, and people that are in Canada and all these other countries. So um, YouTube and Instagram would probably be my choice of the ones that I like the best.
Yeah. And what about the future of the channel? Like what projects, or what do you have in store for the channel? Any new projects on the horizon?
Well, we're always looking for something. I've still got plenty to do on the Mustang, so
Right.
there's going to be upgrades coming on that. The 240 needs some maintenance type stuff, but we'll record that.
Yeah.
Lately, my Silverado has been needing a lot of work, so we've even been recording some of that.
Okay.
I know we've got the extra motor for a burnout motor, so we've talked about what are we going to do with that? What can we build with that?
Yeah.
We've talked about doing stuff like the Danger Ranger or Cletus and cars. So um, we're just gonna just keep building stuff. I don't know if Dan has anything particular in mind that he's looking for, but um, just whatever comes in front of us, I just want to keep building.
Yeah. Nice.
Like I said earlier, I want to build my race car. I mean, that's one of the things on my bucket list to tick off. And if I can find a decent S10 Blazer next year or soon, who knows? I'll look at picking it up.
Yeah.
I'll pull the trigger on that thing.
Yeah, that'd be a fun project for sure.
Yeah, I've had the 240 for a while. I can't say that I'll sell it, but if I come across the station wagon, I think that's got to be something I want to build.
Yeah.
And really, both of my cars are two-seater
Mm-hmm.
cars. So I've got wife and two kids, and if I want to take everybody to go to a car show or go get ice cream or do whatever, we can't really take one of those two cars.
Yeah.
So I've always thought, a station wagon, an SUV, something like that might be something I look at in the future. And I've had the 240 for 10, 12 years, so
Yeah.
who knows, if I come across the right thing, I might decide to switch it up one day.
Yeah. A wagon build would definitely be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about possibly going to Cletus and Cars, the Danger Ranger. Um, any other events, or do you plan on hitting any dragon drives or anything like that?
Well, Narcs has definitely been on me about doing a dragon drive. So as you can kind of see, shirt over here, dragon drive.
Oh, there you
Um,
go.
Dan and I are going to go spectate at Hot Rod Drag Week here at Byron at our hometown track in 2 weeks, I think.
Yep.
So we're gonna go watch that. We'll film and we'll have content on that. Um, and then we'll hit some local car shows probably towards the end of the year. And then the big event for me is going to be PRI
Oh, right.
in December again. So I went last year, and Narks and I have already got a room booked for the whole week this year.
Oh, nice.
So last year I only went for a day, and there's too much to see in a short time. So
Yeah.
we're gonna stretch that out this year. And in fact, I actually had a phone interview this afternoon for a article on preparing for the PRI show that's gonna be published in PRI magazine. So
Oh, wow.
that should be pretty cool when that comes out.
Neat. That's cool. I'll have to watch out for that. So, what about the business side of things? Do you have any plans to, like, would you ever start doing LS swaps for customers or the general public?
Well, Dan knows that I'm always looking for a building, and I've been looking for probably what? I've been searching for maybe a year now.
Maybe longer than that.
So my 2-car garage is filled up. Dan's got 1 car and his garage filled up. Um, I'd like to buy a shop. I don't really want to rent. If I have to, if I come across the deal, I'll rent. But I'd like to buy a shop to be able to put my cars in one place, have a lift, work on stuff. I don't know that I want to LS swap for customers,
Right.
but I would like to build an LS swapped car, you know, take it out back and do some burnouts, whatever with it, and then sell that one and
Yeah.
then build another car. I don't know if I want to get into the business of building for a customer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you have like their expectations,
Yeah.
your reality. So and like then if you mess something up, that's on you.
Yeah.
It's like if I build something that's mine and I sell it, and it's on whatever.
Yeah.
You're buying something, you have every chance to look it over before you buy it.
Yeah.
You know that there's always a chance with it. I would just feel really terrible if I built something for somebody and I did it wrong.
Yeah. And especially with something like if you're getting into the turbo builds and they turn up the boost too much or mess with the tune and give it too much timing and then come back on you.
Yeah. And that's a lot of it is how do you know what broke wasn't them or what you did?
Yeah, exactly. So
it's like
I do have a buddy of mine who has a automotive shop and he does LS swaps on the side. So I do send a lot of people to him. And we've talked about maybe me helping out, but with my actual day job and his hours of his business, we just can't seem to find a good overlap because I'd like to go help him do some of his builds and also get some recording of the cars that he's building because he's building some really cool cars and he uses like haul tech. So, I'd like to get into learning some of that stuff too. So maybe somewhere down the road, him and I could kind of partner up on something.
Yeah, that's cool. And we got a comment from the chat asking where you guys are, 815 Central Illinois.
Yep, northern Illinois, kind of almost on the Wisconsin border.
Right on. So what about like the parts and the trim ring side of things? Do you have plans to expand that and offer more parts and pieces for sale?
Yeah, right now I want to continue doing the trim ring stuff. I think that's a low investment type of thing. I've got a 06 Mustang bumper that's been given to me, so I'm going to start working on that. Yeah, Rockford area. That's right. That's where we're at. So I'd like to do some of that. It's hard to figure out what other vehicles to really make them for. So the Mustang platform is such a big platform in racing that's an easy one to do.
Yeah.
But to expand out from that, it's still trying to figure out where to go. And then there's some other stuff. So this is an example, if you can see it. This is a horn delete plate that's been custom engraved with our logo on it.
Oh, cool.
So kind of thought about breaking into some stuff like that. I've got a couple ones sitting here that haven't been engraved yet.
So what kind of process do you use for engraving those? You just
So
laser?
the same guy that did the plasma cutting for me on my first trim ring, he's got 3 different laser engravers.
Oh, cool.
So he's actually laser engraved a couple stuff for us. The the power steering pump on Dan's BMW is laser engraved with our logo on it.
Oh, nice.
I've got one of these horn delete plates on the Mustang with our logo on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of as we do builds, what are the things that we wish we had? What bracket could we use, or what this or what that maybe somebody doesn't make, or maybe somebody makes them but they're not readily available, or the price is outrageous. Just what kind of stuff like that can we get into?
Yeah. And I think that's basically how like Motion Raceworks built such a big business, is doing exactly that, eh? Like, what do I need for my race car, and start building that, and then what's the next part I need for my race car? And
yep, I've been bugging Doug on his posts about wanting to have him on our podcast, just so that I can ask him some of those questions, because we're on a similar path, right? He started in his basement with one product, and I've got trim rings sitting right behind me, and then what was that next big step? And the thing that that scares me is I've got a pretty good job. So how do you get to a point where you can leave your job and do this full time?
Yeah, exactly. But no, that's cool. I'm looking forward to following you as you grow your business and become the next Motion Raceworks, hopefully.
That is always the goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes now, so I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, but is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Anything I should have asked you about that I didn't? Or
got anything, Dan?
No, I think you covered a lot.
Yeah. Cool. So if people want to look you up and buy one of your trim rings, where can they find you on the internet?
So we are on Facebook, Instagram, TickTock, and YouTube, all at 815 LSX Swaps. We have a podcast that is on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, most podcast streaming services at 815 LSX Talk. We have a website that is www.815lsx.com. And we have a Teespring merch store that can be reached from our website if you go to 815lsx.com/merch.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'll get it edited up and upload it as a podcast episode as well. So, yeah, thanks again for coming on, and we'll wrap this one up. But looking forward to following you guys along in the future. So,
yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us on. It's been a blast.
You bet. Bye for now.
See ya.